So when I preach, I don't talk a lot about my experience with God, my personal walk with God. I'll use illustrations and examples from my family, from my own life to make the point, but I always want the main point in a sermon to be about the text, to be about what the scriptures are saying. But I did want to share some events in my life, some really crucial points in my walk of faith that have really changed the way I view things and really changed my walk with Christ. After becoming a Christian at a very early age, one of the first things that I dealt with was whether I believed because my parents believed, because it's what I'd always known, what I'd grown up with, or whether I believed because I was convinced it was true. I struggled this a lot later in high school, especially as a senior, and so I began to investigate and doubt and raise questions. I'm pretty analytical. I like to study, research things. So I tried to study and find out the beliefs of every religious group, every faith belief, every worldview that I can imagine. Now, this was days before internet, so I spent a lot of time at the library in that section on religion and kind of made a list of different belief systems, investigated them and studied them, and really asked questions about them and about Christianity. One of the things that I kind of learned through that was Christianity really teaches something very different from every other faith. It really teaches that rather than what we do and our own efforts, that we obtain happiness, heaven, the ultimate purpose and goal by grace. And that's just radically different from every other faith system, every other view of the world. About the same time I was really wrestling with this and studying, an older man in my church, he was actually an elder in my church, loaned me a book, Mere Christianity, a book by C.S. Lewis that has had a huge impact on me. Two of the big things with it was, the first thing was it talked about an argument for the existence for God on the basis of we all have an innate sense of right and wrong. We all understand that there's a good and a bad, and as much as we might philosophically say, well, no, everything's relative, in our own relationship with people, what we tend to do is say, no, that's not fair, or you ought to do this. And every time we do an ought or appeal to something, we're appealing to a law that's greater than us. And so if we're appealing to a law that's greater than us, there's a good sense that there must be a lawgiver. Another part of C.S. Lewis's argument was if you kind of understand that there's a God, then looking at Jesus's claim, you have to take Jesus as the summary is a Lord, a liar, or a lunatic. In short, because Jesus made astounding claims to be himself God, one cannot just dismiss him as another teacher like any other teacher. You either have to say that he is who he claimed he was, or you have to dismiss him as someone who was insane or an evil person who's lying to us about who he is. Now, through those things, through investigating other faiths, through wrestling through my own belief and being guided through those arguments with C.S. Lewis, I came to a conviction that Christianity is true. And it became my faith. The faith that I hold, not because it's what I grew up in, not what my parents believed, but it's what I hold because I'm absolutely convinced in the truth of it. Now, I continued to have doubts, continued to raise questions, and would continue to pursue those questions and seek answers for those questions. And every time I did, I found something very satisfactory. And the great thing from that is just felt a strong sense, believed a strong sense, understood that there is a foundation of faith that is rational and that is my own. So my question for you is, have you wrestled through questions you have about ultimate purpose, the claims of Christ, what you believe to be true? If you believe something just because it's what you grew up in or what your family believes, that's not real faith. If you have questions and doubts, I would encourage you to look into those, to explore and to not rest until you find an answer that satisfies you. If you're not a believer and you happen to be watching this, have you looked at the claims? Or have you dismissed faith as just you're not going to believe it? Or have you looked at the claims and really decided, is this something that you can't believe? Or have you looked and said, maybe there's something to it? There are questions about it that you might look at. I think a lot of times people just accept the closest argument to back up what they already believe rather than explore it for themselves. And if you are a believer, don't have fear of exploring where your doubts are, to seek answers. We're called to trust and to know on the basis of truth. We're not called to blind doubt. So I hope that you will explore those. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks.